Tonight, Boris Johnson is battered by his own backbenchers.
In the name of God, go.
The Prime Minister remains defiant even after one of his MPs defects to Labour.
As I said to the House last week, I apologise sincerely for any misjudgments that were made. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we must wait for the outcome of the inquiry.
We're live in Westminster with the latest. Also making the headlines, Scotland's public health crisis. The new head of the Drug Death Task Force tells us he will have a plan within 6 months.
Sauchiehall Street, from a prime site to Skid Row. As M&S pull out, can anything rejuvenate Glasgow's most famous street?
I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. The Prime Minister continues to fight for his political survival tonight, telling MPs he won't resign over the Partygate scandal. Minutes before a chaotic session of Prime Minister's questions, one of Boris Johnson's MPs defected to the Labour Party.
During that session, a former Cabinet Minister, David Davis, stood up to tell Boris Johnson he should go. Live now to our Westminster correspondent Catherine Sampson. And Catherine, a double blow for the Prime Minister this afternoon.
Yes, and look, this all came after feverish speculation from Tory MPs long into last night and into this morning about whether soon there would be enough letters submitted to a powerful backbench committee to trigger a no-confidence vote in the Prime Minister. The number needed is 54. Now, David Davis had the most powerful intervention of the day. Unlike Douglas Rossell, the Scottish Conservative leader, David Davis says he hasn't yet submitted his own letter. Now, these letters, they can go in confidentially. There is no way of getting a fully accurate picture. But overnight, there really did seem to be a sense the mood and the narrative was shifting to one that became about, really whether Boris Johnson was now surviving on borrowed time. Rumours have been swirling of a growing revolt in Tory ranks.
Is it all over, Prime Minister? Is it time to resign?
Before Boris Johnson even got to the chamber today, one of his own MPs, Christian Wakeford, defected. There were cheers as he crossed the floor to join Labour.
Partygate is certainly topical at the moment, but there's been quite a few different issues throughout many months now.
A smiling Keir Starmer said Boris Johnson's time was up.
While Labour was setting out plans to heat homes, he was buying a fridge to keep the party wine chilled. Doesn't the country deserve so much better than this out of touch, out of control, out of ideas, and soon to be out of office Prime Minister?
A call echoed around the House.
The people of North East Fife are being clear to me now. No matter the excuse, there is no excuse for taking the British people for fools. Will the Prime Minister agree it is now time for him to resign?
No, Mr. Speaker, but what I can tell her is that, as I said to the House last week, I apologise sincerely for any misjudgments that were made, but she must contain her impatience, Mr. Speaker, and wait for the inquiry next week before she draws any of the conclusions that she's just asserted.
This week was supposed to be Operation Save Big Dog, but it's quickly become Operation Dog's Dinner.
Boris Johnson seemed more buoyant today until an attack from a former Cabinet Minister and Brexit ally.
I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister doubled down, claiming nobody had warned him that a gathering in the Downing Street garden back in May 2020 would break his own COVID rules.
I certainly think it's been a trigger. Indeed, that's what David Davis himself cited as one of the reasons he took the decision today to call for the Prime Minister to go. And I'm sorry, despite having the utmost respect for the office of Prime Minister, and I've dealt with Boris Johnson for a number of years, you don't need to be told by others if the rules are within the guidance you yourself have set.
He's become known as someone who defies the odds. But as pressure grows, there are questions over whether Boris Johnson can bounce back. Well, look, in some senses, you might argue that defection today did seem to rather rally Conservative MPs behind Boris Johnson in the chamber. There was a buoyancy to him, there was a bullishness to him that really just wasn't on display in the interview he did yesterday. But that did seem to suddenly shift back again as soon as David Davis stood up to make those remarks. Now, I think we're going to be waiting for days yet to keep going with this story, because it does seem like Sue Gray's report, which many MPs say they're still waiting for, won't be out now until at least next week. Asked today if Boris Johnson planned to take the Tories into the next general election, his press secretary was still insisting yes.
Catherine in Westminster, thank you. Theatres, concert halls and gig venues have been badly affected by COVID-19 restrictions in the past month. But with measures easing from Monday, those working in the industry say they can finally see light at the end of the tunnel.
While large indoor events are preparing to return, cultural organisations are still facing financial problems. Some can now access cash from a new Creative Scotland cancellation fund of more than £30 million, as Polly Bartlett reports.
The show will go on. Restrictions on theatres will ease on Monday, and Scottish Ballet's national tour of The Nutcracker is getting back on the road.
Well, I didn't know what to expect really, and just happy to go back on tour, on the road.
We're back, we've persevered, we're going to make it, and so I think everyone will be really thrilled to be back on stage.
Good news after the toughest of months. Panto season is usually the busiest time of year for the King's Theatre in Edinburgh.
I just felt a bit low, and normally that's a really happy time of year. Felt for the staff, felt for the cast, and felt for the technical, support as well that we have on stage. So, everyone's affected in some way with it.
The easing of lockdown restrictions is, of course, good news for the cultural sector, but industry leaders are approaching the reopening of large venues like this with caution. And today, Creative Scotland published more details on their cancellation fund, which will help venues and freelancers who have lost income due to changing lockdown measures.
There is a wider recognition now in government, I think, of the value of the event sector generally, and that's been recognised by funding being made available to try and support the industry. That will require to be continued through the next, for the rest of this year. For some, it has been too late for sure. There have been casualties in the sector.
We've published details today for the cancellation fund for cultural organisations, £31.5 million, which can be applied, which can be drawn down by cultural organisations that have had cancellations.
After weeks of uncertainty, rehearsals are back in full swing for Glasgow's Celtic Connections Festival. More than 60 live shows will be staged when restrictions on crowds are lifted next week.
Yesterday's announcement was a huge relief. The winter months has brought so much uncertainty. It really reminded a lot of musicians of March 2020. It was just not knowing what to schedule, when to schedule gigs for, when to rehearse. And the fact that we didn't have any self-employed income support grants this time round, a lot of freelancers in all walks of entertainment were really struggling.
With the uncertainty behind them for now, performers are hoping that when the curtain rises on Monday, it'll be up for good. Polly Bartlett, STV News.
The new head of Scotland's Drug Deaths Task Force says he can deliver its final recommendations within 6 months. David Strang has taken over the leadership following the resignation of the previous chair.
Former Chief Nurse Fiona McQueen takes over as Deputy Chair. Our Chief Reporter Sharon Frew has been hearing about the priorities and the challenges ahead.
Nothing's going to be quick enough to save people's lives. We wanted this done yesterday, but there is things moving.
Zoom and phone calls help Sandra Holmes connect with families across Scotland living with addiction. When services are closed, she says too many still feel they have nowhere to turn. Sandra, whose daughter is in drug recovery, runs her own support group, but she believes a national helpline is desperately needed.
Without a doubt. And I know it's not going to be easy. We're trying to do so much, but I keep saying to everybody, we have to start with the foundations, start at the bottom and work up.
The new head of the Drug Deaths Task Force says he is listening. He has just 6 months to deliver the group's final recommendations. The previous chair of the task force, in place since 2019, quit because she said she wasn't prepared to do a rushed job.
We need to tackle some of those underlying conditions. So that's why we'll put a lot of emphasis on prevention as well as support for those at the point of needing it.
But with such a wide brief, it does sound a very tall order in just 6 months.
Well, the drugs challenge that Scotland is facing is a tall order. The strength of the task force is that we bring together a broad range of people who can contribute to the solution, because one thing is clear is that we can't keep on doing what we've been doing or we won't make a difference.
In 2020, David Strang led an independent review into mental health services in Tayside. Then he highlighted a breakdown of trust and called for a fundamental redesign of treatment and support. Campaigners claim the same problems need to be addressed within drug services.
You can't split off someone's addiction problem from their mental health or their need for finance or their need for housing. All of these are contributory, so we need to make sure that the services are joined up and that people can get the support when they need it, where they need it.
I have made no secret that there remains much work to be done, particularly in and around service reform. We need our services to be more flexible and to be able to reach out to people irrespective of where they are in their own particular journey.
The first meeting under new leadership focused on the work of navigators helping those in police custody and naloxone training for officers. The next in March will look at how to reach those people in urgent need of support and treatment. Sharon Frew, STV News.
Other stories across Scotland, and a man who left a bomb in Princes Street Gardens has been found guilty of a terrorist offence. 35-year-old Nikolaos Karvalnaskis, a Greek national, admitted leaving a box filled with nails and explosives in a shelter in January 2018.
A civil servant who lied about a photograph showing her bound and gagged in a Marine Scotland office in Caithness has lost her unfair dismissal case. Deanne Fitzpatrick said she was subjected to the ordeal for being a whistleblower, but a tribunal has found she made false claims about the incident.
The cost of living, inflation, has risen again and is now at its highest level in almost 30 years. Prices for clothes, food and fuel are rising steeply, pushing inflation up to 5.4% in December.
And pay packets aren't increasing quickly enough to keep up. Rents and mortgage rates also look set to rise. Sasha Spratt reports.
This morning I saw Her Majesty the Queen and sought her permission for a dissolution of Parliament and a general election on April the 9th.
A Conservative Prime Minister calling a general election. Wet, 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 hitting number one in the charts. It's 30 years since her cost of living was rising this sharply. Inflation has hit 5.4%. March 1992 was the last time it was any higher. But the struggles families face are all too familiar.
Very hard, very, very hard. It's a hard struggle for us nowadays.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Electricity bills, I get one in for £800 odd.
Everything's going up high. Petrol as well, you know, it's a never-ending story.
For some, the prospects of costs rising without enough money coming in is all too real.
It's getting beyond a joke, basically. It really is. I was homeless a couple of years ago, and you know, I've been trying to make ends meet, basically. I busk for a bit of money. I'm in debt. I'm definitely in debt. I used to be a carer. That's what I used to do for a living. So I'm trying to get back into work. I am. But I think that's the only way to go.
Services like the Govan Pantry are seeing more people than ever relying on them.
We've seen a threefold increase. This project itself has got over 1,700 members registered, and they're from the local communities. They're not able to meet the basic cost of food, and we're seeing much more requests for help with debt and money advice.
There are warnings that it may get worse before it gets better, with rises in wages falling behind.
With energy bill rises on the horizon, there's a real crunch coming for many people.
There are some tips people can take, like budget planning, etc., but there is no one-size-fits-all solution for dealing with the challenges.
The Bank of England expect inflation to reach 6% by the spring, with hopes it will fall soon after. Sasha Spratt, STV News.
The decline of Sauchiehall Street continues unabated, with what's pretty much the last big name, Marks & Spencer, saying it's closing down its store there. It's been there in the same building since the 1930s. Ollie Dickinson reports.
Sauchiehall Street was once the beating heart of Glasgow, packed with department stores, cinemas and restaurants. In the 70s it was home to Glasgow's first shopping centre. But today the scene is very different, with empty units, pop-up shops and burned down venues.
It really is heartbreaking. The character's gone completely from what I can remember. You know, it was a great treat to come down Sauchiehall Street. Not anymore.
Gone right downhill, definitely gone downhill. And the shops are just all gone. There's nothing here really.
And now M&S is leaving the street. They've been here since the 1930s, have outstayed the competition, and are the last big names standing. But this store will close in April, and tellingly M&S say they'll focus investment on the right stores in the right places, adding that they're already in talks with a potential partner to take over the site. Shop owners on the street are concerned what effect the store's closure could have on them.
We already know that people come here just for Marks & Spencer's, and with that big store leaving, I don't know how small businesses like mine will survive. It's been tough, and we've been considering our options and sort of hanging on, but the fact that like Marks & Spencer's were still here until now gave us a bit of hope, but now it's just I genuinely don't. I fear for the future, and I don't know what the outcome's going to be for us.
However, experts say it's not all doom and gloom for our high streets.
I would be worried in the short term that there is a consumer crunch coming and we need to get over that hump. But that in the longer term, I think I'm confident that cities and towns are the places if we can get the offer and the assets right.
But people here say the need for change is urgent if Sauchiehall Street is to have a future. Ollie Dickinson, STV News.
Let's get the weather now with Sean.
Watch out for a sudden temperature drop. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, despite the fact it's been colder today, in that northerly airflow, and northerly a good direction for us because we get lots of sunshine, plenty more to look forward to tomorrow. But then, well, as has been the case through most of January, any cold that's around is just around for a few days before the milder air starts to return. And that'll be the case Friday and into the weekend. But for the time being, we hang on to that northerly, that good direction, although it will be a chilly night. Little patches of cloud running down across the Hebrides. That holds our temperatures here, 3 to 5 degrees. But look at that blue map. We've certainly not had many of them around so far this winter, but that's the way it should be. Temperatures down to around freezing, slightly below, so there will be a frost for many of us, especially central and southwestern parts. Now, lovely blue skies through most of the day across likes of Stirlingshire, Glasgow, Inverclyde, Renfrewshire and Bartonshire, into South Lanarkshire and also across Ayrshire. So lovely sunshine around here throughout the day. Temperatures only rising up to about 2 to 5 degrees Celsius, but with light winds hopefully not feeling too bad. Slightly milder, a bit more cloud in the far west. Then we see a return to that milder air Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So that means those temperatures go back up to about 7 to 10 degrees Celsius. And you know what that means. We're back to where we were last week. A lot of cloud here in the west, some drizzle outbreaks of rain. The best of the sunshine reserved for eastern areas. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, more of the latest from Westminster in Scotland tonight. That's with Rona at 10:40.
And we'll be back at the same time tomorrow. From all of us, thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.